Hi, I'm Barb.
Hi, I'm Pat.
Pat and I have a lot of interesting conversations.
Yes, and we thought you might like to listen in to our podcast that we've called Coffee House Inspirations.
We hope you will enjoy our topics.
Good morning, Barb.
Morning, Pat.
How are you? Oh, here we go again. We're always mixing this one up. How are you today?
I'm good. I slept in a little bit this morning, but that's okay. So I feel like I'm trying to catch up, but other than that, I'm good.
Good. Me too. It's actually a little less smoky today, so it feels a little bit easier to be outside, and the sun is out and it looks lovely. So
it's kind of weird not to see the bright sun for the last, I don't know how long it's been, but I mean it's sunny, but it's not the real bright sunshine that we're used to.
Well, I was up during the night last night for a bit, and I looked outside and the stars were shining bright. So I thought that's a good sign, because for the last little while, even if the moon's been out, it's been kind of this foggy little entity in the sky. But last night there was, clear stars, and it was really pretty to see.
Oh, nice.
All right. So we were talking during the week about what we would discuss today. And the thing that keeps coming back and keeps coming up for us is the amount of anxiety that's around right now with a number of issues that are facing us. And so we thought we might take a little journey through some of our previous podcasts to see if we can't dig out some tools from there that would be useful as we're sort of finding our way through these different times. And we were talking about of course, the coronavirus. We're talking about the climate changes that are quite apparent in terms of the heat and the growing number of forest fires in the summer. And some of the issues that are happening, in governments across at least our country, but also in the United States, where there is a sense that they're no longer interested in the pandemic and this movement, and it's causing a lot of anxiety for a lot of people, not everybody, but for a lot of people. And so we thought we might just walk through some of our previous podcasts to see if we can't just offer up a little bit of another toolbox kind of recognition or just reminder for some of those days when you wake up in the morning and you go, should I get out of bed or should I not? Should I go under the bed?
Should I stay under the covers? Should I put the pillow over my head?
So what do you think of that? That sounds like a good idea, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, it does sound like a good idea. These are the days, these are the times we're living in.
Well, and they are, and we can't, there's no place to go. So we have to face these things with as much kind of positivity, I think, and encouragement for others as we can, because we're in this and we have to negotiate a way through that keeps us in a strong place of mental health and physical health.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So I would say that a person's outlook and attitude and the way this is probably the number one. Start there, and then go from there.
And so the very first podcast that we did was on ambivalence. And how much of that are we seeing now, and how much of that creates anxiety?
I'd say that we're seeing a lot of ambivalence. Like, ambivalence is when you're not really kind of sure what to do. And so there's a lot of people out there thinking, should I still be wearing masks or shouldn't I? Should I get the vaccine or shouldn't I? Is it safe to go outside or isn't it? So I would dare say that there's a lot of ambivalence happening, which, like you said, is causing a lot of anxiety.
Yeah. And part of what we talked about, I think, during that ambivalence was first to recognize it, and also that piece of the awareness, and then to realize how it kind of pulls us apart internally, because we were receiving, for certain, we're receiving mixed messages. For sure, there's a lot of fear in communities and in individuals. So, do we go this way? Do we go this way? You listen to this person, you listen to this person. So,
Yeah.
that ambivalence really is difficult and also sort of detrimental to the way when we make a decision and move forward on it, because we never get to that place where we really make a decision and go forward on it and feel comfortable with it. So while you're kind of in that state of ambivalence, it's kind of a ripper, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Internally. So
well, yeah. Yeah, no, I was just going to say because this is new, things are changing, and as things change, as the science change, and as the virus changes and all that, then of course the advice and the recommendations are also going to change, and that is causing huge ambivalence and anxiety in people.
Yeah. And also the same I think can be said for climate change.
Yes.
Where there has been such a rift in what information people are going to listen to, and how some of this affects the economy. People are always worried about carbon tax without really understanding what it is. Is it helpful? Is it not helpful? What initiatives are underway to really help us with climate? Some people say they aren't worth anything. Some people say it's too hard on the economy to go this way and go this fast. And so we're in this situation where we're not even sure what's the correct information, and then
exactly.
And to really decide, when you go to look at science, what does it tell you, and does it have anything to do with me? Yeah. And so that ambivalence is also creating anxiety. And lo and behold, our next podcast after ambivalence was about anxiety, and how that, we were talking about that anxiety that comes from not knowing. Yeah. Sure, or not feeling safe, for sure, or not knowing where or what to do. And that internalizes. And then we get into a little bit of trouble because we go into that fight or flight response.
Exactly. That what is it called? The amygdala attack. Something to do with the amygdala.
I think it's called getting hijacked or something.
Yeah.
Because the amygdala is that piece of the brain that decides if something is really dangerous or not. And it decides if it's dangerous or not, but by what we tell it. Like we look at a situation that's going on in the world, and we get scared, and the amygdala goes, and goes into a kind of a fight or flight mode. Which really is the primary creator of anxiety.
And what's going on now with everything, I would definitely cause a lot of anxiety, because you've got the coronavirus, you've got the climate change, and then what you had mentioned also, politics. And so back in the day, you used to be able to look towards your government and the people that the powers that be, for guidance and leadership. And I dare say that they're kind of the bed.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yes. And so those things that all kind of add up, and those are the things you start thinking about at night when you're trying to go to sleep, or you're thinking about your next move, and that anxiety, it comes and it interferes with your sleep patterns. It interferes with the immune system in the body, because we're always waiting to go for this big fight to occur internally, even though it may be just going on in our minds. And I don't mean just in our minds, because that's a very powerful place to go. But we also, during that podcast, offered some good sort of ways and strategies to deal with anxiety. And I think if anxiety is showing up in our lives a lot, we need to review some of those things to move past the anxiety the best we can. Because the anxiety itself doesn't help us. It actually stops us from moving forward.
Yeah, because there's that fight, flight, or freeze. And so those are that's usually what happens in those instances. And so you're right. So even if you're frozen, you're not going anywhere. Nothing's happening. You're just staying in that state.
and then you're in that survival mode. So everything is urgent. Everything is, the mental processing that you could usually do is kind of on hold. So it really is important to learn some techniques to manage anxiety, because there is so much of it around. And so I think that, there's a lot of things you can read. There's a lot of podcasts that you can listen to that are about managing anxiety, including ours. And to really go there when you're feeling like things are out of control, because these discussions that people are having on a day-to-day basis are this side and this side. And then we're trying to determine which side is the better side. What will be, it's just a lot of confusion and a lot of urgency in all of these things. So
yes, yeah, because you just have to watch the news to see how mental health is being affected, how like domestic violence, the kids not being able to go to school and be around their friends, the opioid epidemic. There's so many things that have escalated during the pandemic, for sure. And then you throw in all the other stuff around that's happening, like you said, the climate change, the political atmosphere. Like, there's just so much happening all at the same time that I'm surprised that we're doing as well as we are.
and are we?
and are we? Yeah.
So that's a really important piece, because anxiety can get the better of you quite quickly. And once it starts affecting your sleep habits, it gets a little bit more urgent that you find some way to manage it. And there are lots of great apps, if you have, on an iPhone or any phone for them, that are good for sleep music or sleep sounds, or just a gentle guided meditation or something of that nature that can really bring you back in and provide some relief for that anxiety, and also to develop a sort of practice of it, because these are very anxious times. So
yes, I think that's a really good point, Pat, because I never realized before how important a good night's sleep was, until I started, not having as many. And then I really started noticing how it affected me physically and mentally. And I just never gave it that much thought before, when people used to say, all the experts used to say how important it was. Yeah. It really is.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's tops. And then we went on to our podcast number 4, which was all about triggers. And you see, that's another really important one, isn't it? Because sometimes we don't really know what triggers all of these reactions that we're having. And right now, it's like, do you know in the Western movies where you'd have like bam, 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 or something, sort of a shootout at the OK Corral or whatever. And that seems to be kind of what's coming at us now, in that bam, 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 bam. You can talk about, well, it's much safer to be outdoors, and then you get a smoke advisory at a number 7. They say, don't go outdoors. It's just like bam, 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 bam. Or you turn on the news in the morning, and all of a sudden, your premier has decided that we don't have COVID-19 anymore. So all hands on deck, and go where you want to go, and blah, blah, blah. And you go, oh my God, what
do I do? Yeah. So, very confusing.
Yes. And so, those and looking at those triggers also is important, because everybody has a different kind of trigger. And it's important to know what yours are, because when you're triggered by something, you kind of feel like you're stopped dead in your tracks, and you get this kind of overwhelming feeling of, oh my God, what does this mean? Or you feel deflated, or you feel like somebody kicked you in the stomach, or
shot you. You feel like you've been shot.
Yes. And so that was also an interesting look at, what is it that triggers our reactions, so that when we know what they are, we have a slight better opportunity to slow things down. And to watch for the triggers, know how they affect us on a very much psychological level, but also very much on a physical level.
Yes, and emotional.
And so it's such a big piece of that awareness, isn't it? Of knowing during a day what things hit us the hardest.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah, it really gives you it really gives you an advantage. If you're aware, if you have that awareness, it gives you such an advantage so that when these things do come up, you go, oh, there it is. And then you can decide after that how to deal with it, how to handle it, what's the best way to go.
Yeah. And everybody's are different.
Yeah.
One of the things that I get triggered by is when I hear some news information that I know isn't true.
Oh yeah.
And that the people that are put in leadership positions aren't giving you the information that you need to make your own decisions. And I get really triggered by that because it's just there's situations in my early years that had that component to it, and it really triggers me. And for other people, other things. So it's so important to know what those are and to take a good look at them, and to it's like having a preventative medicine. Yes.
Yeah. It really does give you an advantage to have that awareness. If you can just watch what your thoughts are, just watch what's your reaction is to all of this, because even if you get triggered, at least you're aware of it, and then you can take whatever steps are best for you to deal with it.
Yeah.
Or to manage it.
Well, and there's a lot of things like one of the podcasts that we did, I think it was number 8, we did on tapping. And
oh yeah.
What that modality is intended to do is to help us release through the prime meridians that they're just used in acupuncture and acupressure. So they're ancient sort of, highways in the body. And tapping really is a way to release some of the stress and the things that are trapped on those highways and on those byways in the body. But there are all sorts of modalities that can help with those things. Like there's body talk, and there's all number of things that are intended to release what's trapped in the body. Because when you have a lot of anxiety, for example, and you don't deal with it, where does it go?
In the body.
And where does it stay?
In the body.
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't we do one on affirmations?
That's the very next one. That was
okay.
Tapping was number 8, and then number 9 we did affirmations, and that's another thing that ties in closely with the one that we did on self-talk, because if we stop for a moment, like you were talking about that this morning before we started the podcast, that you're starting to notice more of the things that are going on in your mind.
Yeah.
So that self-talk. And that's such a big piece of it, because we're talking to ourselves all day.
Yeah. And the stuff that I'm noticing, I'm going, wow, do I do this all the time? And no wonder, it just influences how you see your world.
Yes.
And the world around you by what you're thinking. And so if you can take notice of those thoughts, I'd say it's like a game changer.
Well, I think it is a game changer too. I was listening to a podcast that Eckhart Tolle did, and he says that I think Bruce Lipton also talks about this, that 90% of the self-talk is either chastising ourselves, going over things that we did that we thought we could have done differently.
Oh yeah.
Or, I should have said that, or next time I'm going to say that. And, that kind of, because all saying I didn't do it right and it wasn't good enough. And that is a kind of a perpetual problem that we have, is that self-talk is it's just constant noise.
Yes.
Constant noise. And it's also constant noise that is not self-affirming.
Exactly, because it's usually negative. Not always, of course, but a lot of times it is.
So so that whole idea of affirmations, we talked about that the first thing was, do you recognize the thoughts that are going on in your head? And that's kind of a game changer, like you said, because oh, it's all day.
Yeah.
No wonder we're so tired at night.
All the time. Yeah, no wonder we're so tired.
Or we talk ourselves to death. Does that happen? Can you talk yourself to death? I suspect you probably can.
Yeah. And a lot of it, like and I've read this in other places too. You wouldn't say to anybody else. I mean, you wouldn't be that critical and negative to someone else. So why are you doing that to yourself?
Yes, because the other thing that we know is that the cells are always listening into the talk,
Yeah.
cells in the body. And so they're hearing this thing, well, aren't you a giant turd? Or you, how could you be so stupid? Or what made you think that was a good, all these things that are not life affirming, that are not helpful in any way, shape, or form, but the body doesn't know that.
No.
Just listening in. Oh, I can give
So
you.
what else could you say? Like if you're saying to yourself, well, that wasn't a very good idea, and what a giant turd and stuff. What could you say to yourself instead of that? Like,
Well,
what would
I
you
think
say to somebody else?
That's the whole thing that we talked about in affirmations, and how you craft affirmations to that thing. And the first thing is learning what the language is in your head, what's the landscape going on in your head, so that you can actually change it. And if you were to hear yourself saying, well, I can't believe I said that dumb thing, and you could go, just in terms of recognizing, well, I said it, wasn't the worst thing in the world. I maybe could have phrased it differently, but I didn't. Show a little compassion for yourself, and then build an affirmation around that says, I am increasingly aware of the things I say and the way I react to people.
Mm-hmm.
You flip it around to something that's actually positive without crapping on yourself.
Yeah.
You always, I think, always have to try and show compassion with yourself, because then you never learn how to show compassion for other people.
Yeah, because if you were saying that to somebody else, you wouldn't say it like that. So you could say, oh, maybe would you like to rethink that, or would you like, don't be so hard on yourself, or
Yes.
if you were saying that to somebody else, I guess you could do that in your head.
Sure.
If I was saying this to somebody else, how would I phrase it?
Yeah, exactly. Because there's a multitude of ways to do that. And when you take a look at the construction of affirmations that I think are really important, because this stuff that goes on in our head is like an affirmation, but it's on the wrong side of the tracks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so when you structure an affirmation in a way that, number one, it has to be believable. It needs to have elements of positivity, and it has to bundle itself up in compassion.
Yeah.
So that you're treating yourself the way you would really want to be treated.
Exactly.
And in a way, seeing the world in a way that you wanted to see the world.
Yeah.
So that self-talk and affirmations are a couple of really good aspects to look at when you're in the midst of a little mini kind of what the heck's going on time in the world.
Well, I heard someone on television the other day describe it, say it feels like we're living in a science fiction movie.
Well, certainly aspects of that are so, but also it's always also a reminder to remember it's us that's living in it. So we can't like truly go as though it's a science fiction movie, because it's us.
Yeah.
It's us living it. And so how we shift that around is not going to come from the science fiction movie for sure. It's going to come from the way that we determine to see ourselves in the world and the way we want to see the world.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why you and I enjoyed Gary Zukav's book so much, is because he's talking about these times now and how we can manage our way through it. It's more on a like a spiritual level, but still, I think that is part of who we are. And I think that if people can rely on their faith and whatever they believe in, I think that is going to help them get through anything, really.
Yeah.
And so that's important.
Well, I agree with you. And I think that aspect of spirituality or faith helps you to contextualize what it is all about, and how, and how we can sort of use the wisdom of others to help us sort of navigate through our own anxiety and our own fears and all that sort of thing. Because and that I think is partly what we really resonated so much with Gary's book, like you said, is that it provided a new framework to look at some of this stuff that was not fearful.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So it was very helpful.
It was interesting. I was flipping channels the other night before I went to bed, and I saw an old episode of Oprah. And Gary Zukav was on Oprah because he had written The Seat of the Soul.
Oh, right.
And you'll never guess what he was talking about.
What?
The multisensory human.
Oh, yeah?
So I thought, wow, we missed a whole conversation that he was having.
Well, does he talk about multisensory humans in The Seat of the Soul? I should know because I read that one.
I don't know because, sometimes when you're reading something and you're not ready for a new thing, or you can't hear a new thing, you don't hear it. And I don't know whether he did or he didn't, but he talked about it quite freely and quite openly on this Oprah episode.
Oh.
And he was, of course, very articulate. And it was like, wow, I couldn't get to the record button fast enough because I was going to record it, but I didn't.
I'm actually going to go back and I'm going to look at my book when we're finished here. I'm going to see if he has a chapter on that in that book, because that was a good at least 20 years, if not more.
Well, that's what
ago.
I mean, that was a long time ago, and I don't know what we were listening to, but it wasn't that. Well, I mean, doesn't everybody have that experience though? You might read a book once and you put it down and you think, oh, there were some really good things that I liked about that book. I'm going to read it again. And then you read it again and you go, I don't even think I read it the first time.
I know, it's like it's like you're reading it for the first time.
And I think a lot of people, talk about that as though there's, layers of an onion that you have to peel away to really get to the core. And I think it's like that with a lot of books that are profound.
Yes. And yes. And because you and I read a lot of the same books, we've had that happen a couple of times, and all of a sudden stop and go, whoa, did we actually read this? And then we'll almost have like a little book club about it for a while.
An emergency book club meeting, texting. Did you see that? I gotta look. Okay, so
what page was that on?
Exactly. or we're taking screenshots of pages and underlining them and stuff. So the next one that we talked about that I thought, and we were talking this morning that had some relevance, was the podcast we did on generational differences.
Yeah. Because in regards to like getting the vaccinations, I think you had mentioned to me a while back that the biggest demographic that are actually going out and getting the vaccines were the millennials, right? Mm-hmm. And so then this morning we were talking and we were trying to figure out, maybe through some people that we know that haven't gotten the vaccination, we were trying to figure out maybe what generation they were in, and we don't want to point fingers, but
no.
One of them,
I could mention one of them.
One of them was the Gen X generation. A lot of the people fell into that category. So we were looking at some of the things that it was saying about Generation X, and I've got the term Generation X has been used at various times to describe alienated youth. And they were considered like the latchkey kids, and so they were kind of on their own for a good part of them growing up. The political atmosphere was defined by dominance of conservatism, and so you're not going to tell me what to do.
Yeah,
kind of attitude now. And so we thought that was kind of pretty interesting when we're kind of taking a look at it now, and that those attitudes that are loosely in that generation might be playing a part in their decisions about stuff now.
Yeah, well, and it's such a complex, a totally complex situation right now. And when we try to come up with simple solutions or simple interpretations or stuff, we always miss the mark because they are complex. And I think that is part of what gets us anxious sometimes, is we get this idea it should be like this and that's because of that, and it doesn't happen that way, and we just flip out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even the baby boomers, like our generation, like we grew up in the time where vaccines were very important. I mean, we all got vaccinated in schools, and it was just a thing that you just did. And so we kind of realized the importance of vaccines. And so I don't think there was too many older people, of course, and they've got other health issues as well. I don't think there was a lot of pushback.
No, and I think I agree with you, and I think that, there always has been an anti-vax movement, and they kind of came up, during, I mean, just recently around school vaccinations, and the idea that it was related to autism and all this sort of stuff. And it wasn't as big of a pond to swim in, but along comes COVID-19, and now you got a big giant ocean to swim in, and all these people come out of the woodwork with all different backgrounds and different understandings and different agendas, and it looks bigger than it probably is, but it's influential because of all the lovely things we can do with social media now.
Well, one of the things that I'm not understanding is a lot of the people, it seems like a lot of the people that have decided not to get vaccinated didn't seem to have a problem getting vaccinated for, the flu, or get their kids vaccinated, or get vaccinated in a school, or vaccinated to travel. And I'm wondering why this is so different. Do you think it's because it got like politicized, or what is making this one so different?
You just named them too there. So it got politicized, but it also got had a beautiful amount of platforms on social media. And whether we like it or not, people get their information from social media. And some governments have denounced things like Facebook because of the amount of disinformation that is circulated. So I think there are different tools that people have. It's a different playground because it's a pandemic. So it's not just a localized thing for kids in school. This now involves everybody. And so it's a different playground. And that's why I really think that we need a whole bunch of tools that can help us navigate our way through this.
Yes, I think you're right, Pat. Yeah. I think that, not just one thing. I think you're right. I think a toolbox, like you said, a toolbox of tools to help guide us through these times. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. So that's what we have to offer. And there's also all sorts of other places to get good information. If you want, to really get good information, go to people like, John Kabat-Zinn or Eckhart Tolle or Gary Zukav or Byron Katie, people that are really doing strong, profound change work in the world. And talk to your friends and look into what people are saying. And if it resonates with you, that's important. But, it's just a moving target.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it? Yeah.
So I think we could leave it there.
Okay.
And what have you been watching lately?
I don't know if I've been, you know what? I actually haven't been watching much. I've been doing more reading in this last little while than anything.
And what are you reading?
Well, I'm reading, of course, Gary Zukav, and like I said before, I'm kind of trying to. Well, I'm not reading as much, but I'm trying to do, the Course in Miracles again. And what else is there? I think that's about it. It seems like I just feel like I've been busier doing other things, but I just can't put my finger on it. Journaling. Oh yeah, journaling. I do a lot of journaling, and that was one of the things that we thought would be kind of beneficial for people. To do.
I missed that one. Yeah, talk a little bit about that. Why do you think that's important?
Well, because I think it helps to get your thoughts down, and what you and I like to do is add stickers. So we have a toolbox full of stickers, and which makes it fun and colorful and stuff. But you can also look back, like you had mentioned this morning. You can look back to see how you were feeling at that time. What did you do? what, how did you get through it and stuff. So it's a really good, like a reference to have. And it's just good to be able to write it down, especially if you don't have anybody to talk to.
Yes, I that's one of the things that I really appreciate about journaling is that you when you get it on paper, you can see what's in your head.
Yeah, yeah.
And sometimes it's not pretty. And that gives you that opportunity then to flip back to say, how could I change that thought pattern? And you can look at things like affirmations, or you look at things like, journaling or tapping or whatever it is, to really kind of turn that around, because, thoughts are just thoughts. They're not necessarily real or unreal, but they have such an impact on our lives and on our bodies and on the whole environment around us. So this what goes on in this head is a game changer.
Yeah, I think it's the number one. I think it's the number one thing that we have to be aware of is what are we thinking?
Yeah. So that I'm happy you read, because those are all sort of fun things to read. I've watched a series. I'll just talk about this very briefly because I finished it last night, and I'm not going to tell you how it ends, but it's an Icelandic kind of horror movie, I guess you could say, which I think anyway, it takes place in Iceland, and it's kind of interesting to see, because all you ever see is snow and glaciers and volcanoes erupting. So I don't know what a picture that is.
What's the name of it?
It's called Katya. And it's about because they've had a lot of big volcanoes in Iceland. They've got I think 4 or 5 that are active all the time, and they also have a lot of glaciers. So there's a glacier, and behind this glacier is a giant volcano that's starting and trying to erupt. And all of a sudden, it's not like a story. All of a sudden, people start walking out of the glaciers.
Oh,
and they're seen in this vision of kind of a bit of a snowstorm or something. And as you get close to them, they're covered in mountain ash. And who are they?
Oh, why haven't I seen that?
And you'll be happy to know it's not subtitles, it's dubbed. So it's dubbed in English.
Oh, good. Because
and it's an interesting story. So so have a look at that. It's kind of interesting.
I will. I'm going to look that up.
It's a series.
Okay.
And so I think we're done.
All right. Well, that was I hope helpful.
I hope so too. It's helpful for me. It's a good reminder for me too, because I can get pretty far down the rabbit hole some days.
Yeah. So we actually do use the tools we try to anyways.
Okay. We'll see you next time.
Okay, Pat, you have a great day.
You too. Bye, Barb.
Bye, Pat.